we are about a week away from two important dates on the calendar. Well, actually, multiple important dates on the calendar, depending on whose calendar you're looking at. If you're looking at the Israeli calendar, you have Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut that come next week. And Yom HaZikaron is the day of remembering fallen soldiers, and Yom HaAtzmaut is Independence Day. And the founding Prime Minister of Israel, David Ben-Gurion, wanted these days to be juxtaposed to one another, to flow from the mourning and loss of one day into the joyful celebration of the next day, to really drive home for people the sacrifices required to create and maintain sovereignty, to maintain a state of Israel. And that, as the poem says, I think the poet is Natan Alterman, who wrote a poem about the state being given on a silver platter, and the silver platter is dead children. And it's a very stark poem, but it's a way of Israelis accepting that there will be sacrifice that comes with the creation of the state. But the thing is, this is at exactly the same time on the calendar as when Palestinians remember the Nakba, the displacement, the loss, the exile of over 700,000 Palestinians from their homes in the war that resulted in the creation of the state of Israel, and that resulted in the creation of hundreds of thousands of Palestinian refugees that did not ultimately get a state at the end of that war. Many of them actually ended up in Gaza. So many of the people in Gaza right now are descendants of people who left their homes in 48. And so while Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut are very often, they focus on the Israeli experience. It's sort of like on July 4th here in America, unless you're a Native American, you're waving the American flag, but like also there's an entirely other story, multiple other stories, whether of African Americans or Native Americans, that is wrapped up inside of that story. And the stories are inextricable, and you actually have to tell all of them in order to understand where we are today. And why things are broken in the way that they are broken, and why there is pain and heartbreak in the way that there is unresolved pain and heartbreak and loss today. And so as we go into this season, we wanted to bring in and lift up the voices of people who have felt that loss acutely. We, over the past number of years, have focused at Mishkan on trying to lift up the voices of people who are peacemakers in the midst of heartbreak and in the midst of pain and loss, deciding, affirming, against all odds, and in many cases against what their communities might even say they should be doing, deciding to turn toward each other instead of away. And so the Parents Circle Families Forum is the organization that does exactly this. It's made up of over 700 bereaved families whose common bond is that they have lost a family member to the conflict. And instead of choosing revenge, they choose the path of reconciliation. And through their educational activities, these bereaved members join together and take tens of thousands of Palestinians and Israelis on journeys of reconciliation. And it's not the kind that makes headlines, but it is a more personal and profound shift in perspective, and honestly, the only kind of shift in perspective that has any possibility of resulting in lasting coexistence. As a joint Israeli-Palestinian organization, the Parents Circle Families Forum models constructive dialogue around shared values. Even since October 7th, its staff, members, and thousands of participants are still committed to a way forward that centers around empathy and humanization. The Parent Circle Family Forum focuses on the shared value and sanctity of human life. And so this conversation brings our attention to the values that Palestinians and Israelis can agree on, even in the darkest of times. So we are very honored to have two dear, beautiful souls with us today. I'm going to spotlight them here. Leila Alshich and Ofer Lior. Thank you for being here. Leila lives in Bethlehem in the West Bank, and Ofer lives in the Western Galilee in Israel. And I think I will, like, I have your bios here, but I actually feel like you sharing your story is part of what we're here for. So just to let everyone here know what's going to happen, for about half an hour, Layla and Ofer, and by the way, Layla and Ofer are like they've done this many times, and we're blessed um, to be witnesses to their story. They'll share their stories and dialogue with each other as much as they feel moved to, and then we'll be open to do Q&A to take questions. I think ideally you'll send me questions, and then I'll be able to say like, Ellen, why don't you ask your question, or you, because sometimes I'll see that there are multiple people who have the same question or whatever. So go ahead and just direct chat me if you want to ask something. And I guess everyone else can stay muted during the talk. And if something comes up, if you're, if there's something you disagree with, whatever, wonderful, take note of it, drop it to me in a chat. Let's not have the chat be active as they are speaking, except to send emojis like hearts and other expressions of support. Okay. Um, I think I'll stop there. Is there anything else we should say by way of housekeeping, Ofer and Layla?
Well, thank you. That's it, I
Very
think.
complete. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Um, Layla, do you want to begin?
Okay. First of all, I want to thank you, and it's so great to meet you again. And really, we are so thankful for you to invited us to share with you and to speak about our stories and about our organization and about the general situation now here and about what happened in that church. We wish if it was completed, but at the same time, we are so happy if just one person just listened to us, and we know that that will shake their hearts and shake their emotion, and they will share this with other people. So my name is Layla Sheikh. I'm from Bethlehem. I am 46 years old. I'm a mother for 5 children, and I have 2 grandchildren, and one of them, we have him today. So I'm really so happy today to have this great news in this darkness. So thank God. Um, I
Mabuk.
was shukran. I was born and live in Jordan because my family, they are originally from Bethlehem, but they went to Jordan because my father, he was a teacher, and he went to Jordan to teach the children in the camps in Jordan. And after that, the war was started in 1967, and because of that, the Israeli government at that time, they closed the border, and my family lost their citizenship as Palestinian, and they became Jordanian. So I I I listened to thousands of stories about Palestine from my father, and I loved Palestine from what I heard from my father. So for me, it's become like a dream to came and to visit Palestine. After I finished my study in accounting and business in Jordan, I met my husband there. He's originally from Bethlehem too. So in 1999, I came back to Bethlehem to get married and to start my new life. And I was really so happy to be here because for me, it's a dream come true. To hear about something, it's totally different than to came and to live in. So I thought that the life will be great and everything will be amazing. First year, it was really amazing. But second year after we have our first daughter, the second intifada started, or the second uprising. And it was so hard for me because that was the first time I live in a situation like that. But uh, or even during that time, the Israeli government take another decision not to give people like me who came from Jordan or Arab countries a Palestinian ID. So that meant I can't go freely from place to place, but I didn't care too much because I have my husband and my daughter to take care of. And our happiness become much more a second year after we have our second son. And we start to make plan for their future, and we start to have dreams about that. But that happiness was ended 11th of April 2002 when the Israeli soldiers came to our village and they threw tear gas, and because of that he became so sick. And when we tried to take him to a hospital inside Bethlehem, because we live in a village outside, the Israeli soldiers stopped us more than 4 hours, and they said it's a military zone, you can't enter. So the next chance was to take him to Hebron, and then they stopped us more than 4 hours. So when we reached the hospital, it was too late to save his life. At the end of that day, my son Qasai died. He was just 6 months old at that time. And that was so hard for me. I was filled with hatred, anger, but at the same time, I didn't think to take revenge because revenge will never bring my son back. But my other decision was that I don't want to have any kind of relationship with any Israeli person. And that was really so hard for me as a new mother, my family away from me, the situation, uh, everything was so difficult for me. So after 16 years, I met one of my friends that I didn't saw for a long time, and he started to talk about the burn circle. And I stopped him and I said, "Are you crazy? You know what happened to me and to my son?" And then he said to me, "I want to ask you a question. Why, until now, you didn't tell your other children about what happened to their brother?" I said, "Because I didn't want them to be part of this cycle of violence, because maybe if they know, they will start to think to take revenge. And I lost one of them, and I'm not ready to lose another one." And he said to me, "But maybe this will be a good chance for you, and not just to protect your children, maybe other families." To be honest, in the beginning, I thought that he's crazy. He imagined that because in my whole life, I didn't hear about this kind of organization. Until one day, he invited me to a conference in Bethlehem. Um, First time when we stayed, there were just Palestinian. I listened to their stories, and that was something like normal. Most of these stories I know and I heard about them before. But after 5 minutes, the Israeli people start to enter that room. I start to feel there's something aching in my chest. I don't want to be with them in the same room, and I tried to leave. Then my friend stopped me, and he said to me, "Please just sit and listen to them." Then I said, "Are we crazy? This is one of the strangest things that I tried to do." And I tried to leave. Then I saw something amazed me when I saw the Israelis and the Palestinians try to hug each other and kiss each other like family members, not even just as friends. And that was the first time I saw something like that. So I said to him, "Okay, I want to sit and I want to listen because I want to know what's the thing that make them so close to each other like that." So when I heard the Israelis start to talk about how they lost their beloved ones, I was really amazed and shocked because that was the first time I listened to this kind of stories. And for the first time, I looked at them as a human like me, not as enemy. The first time I felt we share the same pain, we share the same tears, even if we had a different circumstances, but we're still human. And nothing worse than losing a child or a family member, and no one could understand that pain unless someone be in the same situation. So from that day, I decided to participate one of the project called Parallel Narrative Project to learn much more about the Israeli. Because as a Palestinian, I just met settlers or soldiers, but to meet normal people like me, I didn't have a chance to do that. So on this is the main project in our organization, which gives a chance for both sides to sit, to learn, to talk about everything. Like we met for 8 times, and we had two professors from both sides, one Israeli, one Palestinian, who spoke about the history of the two nations. We even went to visit Yad Vashem Museum in Jerusalem to know much more about the Holocaust. And even we went to visit the Palestinian village was existed before 1948. It's not about comparing the pain. It's not about telling who's first, who's second, who's right, who's wrong, but it's a chance to understand each other, to understand where everyone came from. So at the first day, they asked us to speak about something happened during the conflict affect our lives. And that was the first time I spoke in front of people, even between me and my husband after his death. We didn't spoke about him. We didn't spoke about anything about him. And that was so hard for me. Like after 16 years, it was like to open the window again and bring the memories back, the pain, the anger. I couldn't complete the story and I started to cry. And then an Israeli woman came and she sat in front of me and she started to apologize. And she said to me, yeah, I didn't hurt you, but the people who hurt you from my own people. I'm a mother too. I could understand your pain. I could understand even the word that you couldn't say. And she came and hugged me. Both of us started to cry. She didn't know that day by her simple words, she changed my whole life. Even she returned me back to my belief. As a Muslim mother, I believe in Quran. I believe in all the scriptures, but there's a script said, can't judge all people because of mistake of one person. I know it. I believe in it, but I didn't work at it because I felt of hatred and anger. From that day, she like returned me back to my life, to my beliefs, to my family even. From that day, I decided to be a member in the forum, start to give lectures in Israel and Palestine, travel around the world to spread the message of peace and reconciliation. And I thought this is, or that's all, and everything will be great, and everything become good. It's so easy to convince people about peace and love and reconciliation. But the most important thing, when you ask yourself if you really meant that. So life gave me another test. One day in Jerusalem, I've been with Robbie Damlin and other people from other organization. We spoke about our stories. And after I finished, there's an Israeli man who stand up and who looked at me and he was crying. And I thought he cried because he just listened to my story. I know him like 2 years ago. His name's Chen Alon. And we like friends, but that was the first time I listened to his story. And then he mentioned that he was a high officer in the army and he served in my area. And then he mentioned that he stopped a Palestinian car which have sick children from going to a hospital. Then it's become hard for me. Then that was the real test. At first, I didn't know what to say or to do. I couldn't breathe. And then a few minutes later, I started to cry. And then Robbie asked both of us to go outside that room to talk about what happened. And then he mentioned that he, after time, or his son became so sick. And when he tried to take him to a hospital, the guard stopped him because he want to ask him a few questions, but he was in a hurry. And then he said, at that moment, I just realized what I did to the Palestinian. He was a high officer and then he quit from the army. He jailed because he refused to serve. And he established a new organization which called Combatant for Peace with ex-Palestinian fighters to end the occupation and to change this life for both sides. And then I looked at him and I said, look, Ken, this is so hard for me to listen to you. But at the same time, I want to thank you. If I know that part of your story was there and you didn't tell me, I will never forgive you. But because you've been so honest and you have that courage to speak in front of me, I will forgive you. And then I realized this is the real reconciliation. I meant every word I say. I meant everything I did. And that even give me power and courage to continue even in these dark times. Maybe we have many wars before, but maybe this is one of the worst one. From the 7th of October until today, maybe most of the people understand and they start to realize what's going on in Gaza, but no one understands what's going on in the West Bank. Because from the 7th of October until today, all the people who work inside Israel, they lost their jobs. The economic situation in the West Bank become so bad. Most of the people, they've been attacked from the settlers in their houses, in their cars, in the street. They burned their houses or their cars. We didn't have shelters. Like in my village, there's 10 rockets fell down in my village, and we didn't know if it's from Hamas or even from the Iron Dome. Sorry. Um, my children because non and my youngest daughter, she's 8 years old until today. She's still afraid when she heard any noise or anything. She have many questions about what's going on. We know this is hard. We know this is not normal, but we couldn't stop even in these dark times because of those people who lost, because of our children, because of the generation will came after that and ask themselves what they did to change this. And we didn't want them to say they just sit side and they didn't do anything. And we believe that God created us to love each other and to live, not to kill each other without no mercy. Every soul is so precious. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you, Layla, for bringing your story and bringing it right up until this moment. Oh, and there you go. I just want to recognize with everybody who's sitting here, that was a lot to take in. And she took us not just on a story of what happened, but also your own internal process and how that process of growth and peace building, how that was tested even inside of you, which I think we can all probably relate to in different ways when our values that we think we hold bump up against a test, bump up against an opportunity to either default back into the way that everybody else around us seems to be responding, or actually we are able to do the thing to practice what it is that we've been preaching. Thank you for sharing all of that with us. So Ofer, I turn to you. Layla, if you want to go off camera, I can pull you down off the spotlight if you want. Do you want me to do that?
I have just a phone call, so because of that, the camera was
okay. No worries. All right. Ofer, please.
Thank you, and thank Lila for for sharing her story. So my name is Ofer Lior, and I'm 50 years old. I have one son, and I live in the northern part of Israel, not north enough to be evacuated, but not north enough to hear the booms sometimes. Till now, we are not in danger, but we're still hearing the bombs falling or the anti-bombs of Israel, of the IDF. And this is how we live in the last 6 months, more than that. And I think the thing I will start my story with is that I grew up, I think, different than many of my Palestinian colleagues in the parent circle. I grew up and I didn't know nothing about the Palestinians. I knew they exist. I live in a family that believed in peace. They were kind of people belong to the soft left, you can call it. But it was just the idea that we live here and somebody wants to kill us. And it wasn't clear so much to me why. What was the issue as a young one? What do they exactly want from us? I had 3 older brothers. All of them went to the army. And this was just life, that you need to go to the army. As a very young one, I knew I'm about to be a soldier at some point because this is what we need. And I didn't know any Palestinian, and it wasn't something about me or about my family. I think nobody that I knew around me had any kind of contact with any Palestinian, any Arab at all. They were just there, and we know we have some kind of conflict with them. And for me, it was like, why do they want to kill us? What did we do to them? What is the story? And of course, it wasn't my fault. Nobody told me the full story. When I was 15, my brother, who was the closest to me, Oren, that was 23 years old, was killed, where he was reserved as a soldier in the border with Jordan, a very peaceful border usually. It was before the peace agreement. It was 1989. But it wasn't a place where usually things were happened. He was at the time when he got killed, and he was 23, I was 15. He was somebody I was looking for. It was that age that you are starting to look somebody else instead your parents, and he was kind of a model for me. I really wanted to have his attention, and he was important to me in many ways. Of course, since I was a very little child, but in that age there was something very painful about losing him as somebody that walks with me through this life. And something else that was very painful is just to see my parents and what's happening to them and the effect that was on them. It was a very heavy experience that I think in some ways maybe I healed from it. In some other ways I'm still carry it, I think, and I kind of learned something from that about the connection between parents and children, even before I was a parent myself. And I think, unlike many of my colleagues, the Palestinians, I never had any kind of thoughts about revenge or about wanting to kill somebody else. It was just something that happening. We all knew that we need to go to the army, and we all knew that at some point someone might get hurt and might get killed. And it felt like this is the price we need to pay in order to live here. In some ways, I think I was even proud, or I know people in my family for sure were proud. Not that they were happy about it, of course not, but there was something like, we were among those families that pay such a heavy price because we are so dedicated to our country, to our survive here as a Jewish people. And some point along the way, maybe it started even before Oren got killed, I started to ask questions. In that time, the first Intifada, the first uprising of the Palestinians, have started, and there were more and more voices, I think, around me in the news and in the media, like asking questions about what exactly is going on, why did this conflict keep going on for so many years? And as time goes by, it was more and more clear to me that there's some kind of very heavy inequality that I wasn't aware of between us and the Palestinians, between the Jews in Israel and the Palestinians. It was a process. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't easy not to feel bad about it. But it was more and more clear that there's some power that it's much more dominant than the other for many, many years. And I belong to the part that is dominant, the part that maybe you can call it the oppressor or whatever term you want to use. It's hard to feel good when you realize it, when you find it out. And it was still, because the place where my brother was killed, he was a reserve soldier. It was in the border with Jordan. It was even harder for me to understand what exactly did they want, those people there. But the people that killed Oren were Palestinians. He was serving along the border. 2 Palestinians came from Jordan with weapons, maybe trying to get one of the settlements. It was deep south in the desert. Probably going to get one of the settlement that was there. It wasn't in the West Bank even, and she just ran into them completely by accident, and there was some kind of a short shooting from both sides, and one of the bullets just hit him in the chest and killed him. And because it was there, because it was not even in the West Bank or in Lebanon, in a place that there was not any kind of conflict about them, at least as much as I knew, it was even harder for me to understand, like, what is the story? Yeah, we dominate them and everything, but why there? Why him? Why? And I grew up with those questions and with those ideas. And later on, I went to the army. I was in the combat. I finished the army, and I went to work in some youth movement as a facilitator. And in this youth movement, it was in the 90s. He used to do a dialogue meeting with Palestinians from the West Bank and also from Gaza. And I came to the first dialogue meeting. I was one of the organizers, and it was like a weekend, I think, or maybe a Saturday. And I just started to hear things I never heard before about their story that I knew nothing about. It wasn't people that were bereaved or anything like that, just people, Palestinians from the West Bank, mostly, that telling their story of their families. It was very moving to me. Somehow I was able to listen to this. I'm not sure exactly why. It's not like I'm better than anybody, just somehow I was open to this, and it's really helped me to understand something about the reality, something about their history, that again, not because of nobody just ever told me this, and nobody gave me the opportunity to have this kind of dialogue. But even then, and in these moments, I never shared anything about my brother. I didn't thought that there was any kind of connection. I didn't think, they want to hear about it, and I didn't know how to include my story and the things that happened to me and to my family in this dialogue. It seems to me like nobody really want to listen to this, and I didn't know exactly how to bring it up. So I just did it, and for many years I have worked in connection with Palestinians from the West Bank, from inside Israel, and I never told them anything about it. It was, part of my biography, but nothing more. And later on, when I was already a grown-up and a father, I went to some school. I did some work there in completely different matter. And there was a meeting of the dialogue of the parent circle, a dialogue meeting of the parent circle in one of the classes there. One of the main things the parent circle is doing, not in these days, not this year, but until this year, is a dialogue meeting inside Israeli schools, like two people like us, a Jew and a Palestinian, getting into a school, in a high school, usually, or sometimes university or college, and we're sharing our stories, and we have a meeting with the students there, with the pupil. And this is the thing that happened in that school, and I just heard about it, and I says, can I come and listen? And they say, yeah, of course. And there was a woman there that lost her sister from some rockets that came from Lebanon in the early 80s. And it was just so moving to me to hear it, and the way that her personal story was so much connected to the work she was doing in order to bring peace and to bring reconciliation and to help people to listen to each other. And the way that the story she shared helped the Israeli students to listen to the Palestinian, to the story he shared. There was some kind of process that needed to be combined. And just right after this meeting, I went to the women or somebody else that was there, and I asked, how can I be part of this circle that I knew about it, but I never thought it can help me in any way or can be useful for me in any way. And they gave me a phone number or email, and I think it was 2007, maybe, or 8. And that's the point where I joined the parent circle, and ever since I did maybe hundreds, but for the least dozens of meetings like this, most of them in high schools in Israel. And I think I never thought about revenge, but I think because you're the dominant power, it's much easy not to think about it. It's much easy to not to put your anger aside, or you have much more things to hold for, especially here, because we have the conditions we as Israeli lives are much more convenient in terms of our rights that we have, the freedom that we have to move. So I never thought about, I never thought about risking it in order to have some kind of revenge. And as the time went by, in this process that I was going through, I have more and more idea why do the Palestinians have such a hard feelings toward us, the Jews. That not say I'm justify, and I'm not justifying anybody for any violence, and I'm not justifying anybody from killing my brother. Oren was a good man. He was just wanting to be good. He was a young man wanting to have a life, thinking about what to go to study in academic, and and just have a girlfriend that they broke up after many years, and he was very sad about it. And he was just a young person that wanted to live his life. It wasn't like he didn't deserve any kind of that, and my parents never deserve, and neither I never deserve. But I think this is how this thing is functioning when the this equality and where the oppression is so heavy. So this is the feelings that coming up, and people are acting out those feelings, and this is the way to act it out. It's not the thing that we want. It's not make sense in many ways, but sometimes people think this is the only thing they can do. And I think also Israelis many times the only thing they can do is that they can react by violence in order to defend themselves, but it's not all the time really a defense. Many times it's just a way to preserve the power and the domination that they're having. And as part of what I do today for many years, but especially in the last 10 or 12 years, I'm facilitating and organizer of dialogue meeting of Jews and Palestinians who live inside Israel. It's not part of what I'm doing in the parent circle. I do it in other organizations. And as time goes by, it's some way, because the reality become harder and harder, also these meetings become harder and harder. It's much harder to people to listen. Also in the dialogue meeting we do in the parent circle, for me at least, I could have noticed that as time go by in the last few years, it's become harder and harder to the young people to listen. There is a very clear brainwashing from the Israeli government. If you think about the things that they're learning in schools and and even in university, but especially in schools, people really don't know much about what is the Palestinians. There's some people in Israel, in the government of Israel, that still claim that there's no such thing as Palestinian, that it's, that the Palestinians are not, never existent, it's not existent. It's not a nation. And this is what this is, I think, what is our battle right now. And of course, since the 7th of October, it's become much harder because the level of the fear is so heavy, and the anger. And the last thing I will say is that I think what we are trying to do, there's many other organizations that calling for peace and working for peace, and all of them are important. And also there are many people that have the same experience that I have in terms of losing a member of their family that completely won't agree with me, speaking about Jews. And I don't think because what happened to me, I'm smarter than anybody. I think what we are trying to show that if us that paid such a heavy price that really changed our life, and each one in the way that it does for him or for her, if we decided and if we can be together and listen to each other, so we want to create a model. And because if we can, maybe everybody can. Because it's something that maybe you just need to make a decision. And this decision, part of it, it's mean to look at some very heavy feelings that you might have of pain, of anger, of feeling that you don't believe other people, feeling that you are a victim, all kind of feelings that you need to face in order to really be willing to listen to the other side. But we also know that when we are willing to listen to the other side, we found other friends there. We see that we are actually much more alike than we think we are. And that actually in the roots of everything, in the source of everything, human beings are never really enemies. This is just something that's happening to us in the place where we are growing up and educate, and we can go against it. And this is what we are trying to show up, and also to be some kind of ambassador of hope, because the helplessness and the discouragement that you can see right now here, especially after the 7th of October, but even before, is really, really heavy. People just don't believe that things can be different. People just believe that the war will be here forever. And, I grew up all my life, there's war around me, in different levels of how much it's severe, but there's all the time there's war and violence. I'm 50 years old. Every day in my life, there's some kind of violence around me. It's not easy to keep some kind of hope, but I think this is what we are trying to bring up, that we are not to give up. There's still many chances. Israelis and Palestinians, historically, we are not enemies. Israel and German, we have connection with German right now. People are going and living in Berlin, and Germans come to here. So, and what's happening between Israel and Palestinians, it's nothing to compare with what Germans did to the Jew. So, of course, we can have good relationship. We can benefit from being next to each other instead of killing each other and fighting with each other.
Thank you, Ofer.
Thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you for sharing with us from childhood into this moment, not just your story, and your family's story, but a sense of like what kind of the narrative is, like what you learned in school, what you learned in university, what kind of the dominant feeling is around you that leads to people responding in this moment the way that we're seeing. I'm wondering, Leila, as you were listening to Ofer speak, what came up for you? If I can ask.
Could you please just repeat the question again?
Yeah, as you were listening to Ofer talk about growing up in Israel, not learning much about Palestinians, Palestinian history, not understanding why on earth would a Palestinian want to kill my brother at the border? Yeah. Why, and then recently now also just the sort of hardening of the narrative, whether in school or in university, to continue to not, teach or acknowledge kind of the other perspectives, Palestinian experience. As you were listening, what came up for you?
I was really shocked, not just because of what Ofer said, because when I at the beginning become part of that project and start to learn much more about the Israeli, and we We talk to them, we have many discussions, and most of them, they are like offered. They didn't hear about any of our stories, or they didn't know anything about our history. So this is so hard sometimes. Sorry. This is so hard sometimes to understand how's that come, like we live together, how you didn't understand how and why that happened. After that, I understand that, but in the beginning, I was really shocked when I know, because as Palestinian, we thought that the Israeli understand and they know all the history, they know everything about us. So this is why we insist to do this project, because that give a chance for both sides to understand. Because even for the Israeli, when start to explain how we live and many things about our life, they were shocked. They didn't know anything about us. So we believe what we are doing, it's like to put the cracks on walls, because we didn't have just that wall of cement. We have walls of hatred, anger, unknowing each other. There's many emotion. I love when Ramil Hanan, he's one of our organization member, when he said that anger eats you alive. And
That
that's
anger will
really,
eat you alive. Uh-huh.
yes, and I agree about that.
Mm.
Because when I stayed like for 16 years, refusing to have any relationship with any Israeli person, that anger really controlled my life. Even with my relationship with my other children, I always felt there is something between me and them, prevented me from having a normal communication with them. There is something always in my back. I didn't feel free. But when I become member in the forum, start to talk about what happened to me, and even when I forgive those people who were responsible about what happened to my son, I start to feel free. And maybe the lesson that I want to say about forgiveness, some people think when we spoke about forgiveness, that meant we will forget. No one will forget. I will never forget my son, and Offer will never forget his brother. But forgiveness, it's something for me. I will speak about myself, because this is not something that we ask people to do in the parent circle. It's personal choice.
Mm.
For me, it's to put the hatred and the anger away and don't think about them anymore, because the anger will never solve anything. It will make everything much more complicated.
Mm. Um, Gail has a question. Gail, do you want to unmute and ask the question you have?
Sure. I was really surprised to hear that Israelis didn't grow up learning anything about Palestinian history. I didn't, and here I'm 70 years old, didn't know anything about it, but I'm shocked that you didn't. But I was curious about if Palestinians learn anything about the Holocaust and all of the issues of like what happened to all of these people who survived and ended up in Israel because there were hardly any places that would take them.
Thanks, Gail.
This is a good question. For many Palestinians, when you speak about the Holocaust, they refuse, or they thought this is a fake story, because the Israelis want to justify what they are doing in Palestine. And even there's people, when they understand what happened about the Holocaust, they've been shocked, like if the Israeli people being under all that trauma and tragedy, how they could do the same thing to other people. So it's very complicated to explain sometimes. Yeah, we feel sorry about the people who were suffered in Auschwitz, in the whole thing that happened for the Israeli people. We feel that that was one of the worst things could happen to any person. for me, I heard many stories. I saw many movies. I saw many series, not project, what they call it, programs about the Holocaust, about.
Layla, you muted. You muted.
And
Oh, for just repeat what you said for the last 4 seconds. You muted for just a moment.
yeah, when I saw these kind of movies and I listened to this kind of story, as I've been shocked. How could any person?
You muted again. You muted again. Come back. You've been shocked about, say it again.
I've been shocked because, sorry for that, but I've been shocked because when someone how could some people could do and hurt other people? Like when we've been in United States 2 years ago and we went to the South and we learned about the slavery, and we went to many places and heard many stories. I've been really shocked. How could people could hurt other people because they just want to control them, just justify themselves. So this is hard for me to understand. How could someone like Hitler do that to all the people? And for what? Why he did that? Like, nothing justify what he did. Not to the Jews, not to any other people. Like he didn't just kill Jews. Yeah, I know Jews were the most, but nothing could justify what he did.
You're reminding me, Layla, about a story. I've told it here and referred to it. This story of a Palestinian university professor who wanted to take his students to Auschwitz to show them the truth and reality of what happened. And the reason is because he wants Israelis to understand Palestinian history. Well, if Israelis are going to understand Palestinian history, which is challenging for Israelis to open up and learn a completely different narrative. He said, you have to learn the history of how so many Jews got here. And his car was burned, his tires were slashed, his family was threatened. He was let go from the university faculty, and he ended up having to move to the United States with his family because the idea of learning about this history that is so contrary to the way that people see themselves and their own history is so threatening. And then to come to the point that you're describing, where no, you actually look at it and you absorb it, and it makes your heart bigger. It makes your heart hurt, but it's more liberating to understand how did we get here, and to not perpetuate the closing down of the heart, but to open the heart. I mean, that's really what you're describing, I think.
Yeah. One of the things that we did in the parent circle, we spoke about reconciliation. We have a good relationship with each other, but that didn't mean that we agree about everything. Like, we disagree about few things, but we still respect each other. We still understand each other. Like when Offer said anything, I could understand why he said that, where this came from, and that will give me a chance to understand him, to listen to him.
We have another. Well, we have one. Is Susanna. I want to read your question, because I think even the question just says it all. Well, actually, why don't you go ahead and ask Susanna, without needing Layla and Ofer to be experts on American history, but why don't you just go ahead and say the question?
Sure. Thanks, Rabbi. What you're both describing in terms of the not learning about each other's history, my question is there a lesson here for Americans who want to circumscribe what history we learn, or to limit the history only to the dominant narrative, and how to, I guess the question is how to open up and learn the things that expand your heart, even if it hurts.
I think maybe one of the most great thing is to make a trip to the South in the United States, to Mississippi, to oh, forgive me
Let me jump
because
in. I am a Southerner. I'm from the South, and I completely agree with you. That is totally true.
yeah, because when we've been there, I was really shocked. There's many cities, it's like a city of ghosts. Like there's no people. Most of them moved out from these cities. So what I think sometimes why United States want to be involved with in a war with other countries and spend billions of dollars on those wars, and for what? They could spend those money in their country to improve their life, to improve the life of the people there. And I think this is one of the things that you as Americans should ask for the government to do, to be much more like careful about what's going on inside. And I thought there still, until today, there's modern slavery in the United States.
Yes.
They try to ignore sometimes, but it's still there. I saw many things, and this is so hard. Like I saw a video for a Black person who just sit out of the restaurant, and there's two cops. They came and they want to arrest him without no reason. And when they asked him about his ID and he refused, they tried to arrested him, and finally he showed them his ID, and it seems that he was one of the FBI, and they've been shocked. So I think if he wasn't from the FBI, what will happen to him?
Right. You're calling out
Yeah.
sort of the concept of who counts. And what I'm hearing you both say is we all count. Every single one of us counts.
Yeah.
And one of the problems that we encounter here is there are plenty of people who don't believe that everyone counts.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
many people in many countries have the same conflict. It's not like the one that we have, but there's conflict in any countries. Even in the houses, there's conflict between children, between brothers, between neighbors, and this, what we are trying to talking about, it's not just a local message, it's an international message. There's many people sometimes when we do a dialogue meeting, uh, they ask us, so why you try to tell us that? It's kind of ask people if they have any kind of problems between student at school, between neighbors, or just to give a chance to spoke about what's the thing that make you afraid or angry, and what's the thing that you dislike or you like. And I remember the first day when we met, Israeli and Palestinian at the same room, we've been afraid from each other. We didn't know what will happen. At the end of that day, we've been dancing together, laughing and talking like we know each other for many, many years. So I believe every person just need one moment to change his life forever.
Yeah.
I think, Suzanne, to answer your question, is that actually what you ask, especially as a white American, maybe is like, how can we convince, or how can we show people from the dominant group that this is their interest to do this work, to know this? And this is a hard question. The only thing I can say is that for me, I know that when I managed to really listen more and more to Palestinian stories, not only about the current situation, also about their history, about 1948, for example, and like what we learn in schools here, in 1948, of course, we learn about the war and all the hero of the heroes, from the Israeli heroes that, were willing to be killed and everything. But I never got the idea of what really happened to the people that used to live here, that in many ways they were the indigenous of this land. It depends how exactly how you define indigenous, whatever we can argue about that, but there's definitely the people that were in this land. My grandfather wasn't born here, three of them at least. And I think for me, when I was managed to really listen to them, it just gave me more profound idea of the world, and I could see that something very human is there, which I wasn't really able to see without it. The question, I think, and I think the answer eventually is not about personal people, it's about the system. Because if the system is not supporting it, if the system is not giving resource to it and the system doesn't believe it, or maybe even doesn't want it to happen, so it's much more limit chances for us to do it. I think in the United States there was times, not all the times, that there was a system that want to combine blacks and there was people that fight against the slavery, against the. We don't have this. I mean, there are people like this in Israel, but there's no people that people really appreciate. There was a military regime of the Arabs who live inside Israel. I'm not thinking about in the West Bank from 1948 until 1966, which means many of the people, the rights were very limited. People here didn't have the freedom to move from place to place, to move apartment and such, and there were people that was fighting for it, and we know nothing about it. And again, it's not like I'm saying that the Israel is worse than the United States. United States, have many things to I'm not sure exactly the term, but they do a lot of not good things, bad things, to the people that they are oppressed, the black people, the indigenous, Native American, and it's not that it's something that it's not in history. It's still very heavy racism in the United States, but in Israel, and I think it's because of the war, because of the conflict, and because the Jews have some kind of idea that everybody is against them. And it's true about Israelis. I'm not sure it's only the Jews in Israel. And there's something about the Jewish history, and especially the Jews who live in Europe, that there's a lot of hatred. It's sitting there, and every time we see it, we feel that we are the victims. And in Israel, we are in a different side right now. We are the one that we're the one that's ruling. This is a very new, for 2,000 years, we didn't have such kind of situation. So it's something really some work would need to be done in order for Jews to decide, yeah, I want to listen to them. I have to have connection with these people. I don't need for them to be my enemies. I can change it. This is in my hand. And right now, the system, the governments, and the education system doesn't seem that they really want to cooperate with this. So, of course, it's important that people will do work to change it. I'm not saying, we need to wait for anybody, but it's really much easier when there is a system that decide this is where we are going. And right now the system says, no, we are going to keep fighting. We're going to fight forever because this is our life. And sometimes it's a manipulation. Many times these people really believe it.
Ofer,
I think,
you're reminding me of the Israeli historian Yuval Noah Harari, and he's a very eloquent spokesperson that comes out of Israel, talks about history, but also reflects on human dynamics. And he says, there's a myth that human beings fight over resources, water, land. He said, in this region, there's enough to go around. What we're fighting over is a story. We fight over stories. Like the human being is the only creature that knows how to fight over stories. and we use stories to heal, and any religious organization, Martin Luther King, Gandhi, whoever it was, can move people toward healing, reconciliation, forgiveness because of the stories we tell, or exactly the opposite. The story we tell is we will always be the victim. We will always be fighting. People will always hate us. And so we will always need to defend ourselves. We will, or from whatever perspective. And he said, we need to change the story. And what I hear the two of you doing and the Parent Circle Family Forum is changing the story and saying, whatever history we need to hear the history, we need to hear each other's stories. If Layla's story isn't heard, if your story isn't heard, if a person can't actually share the truth of their life, in a room with people listening who have a hard time hearing it, but nonetheless sit and listen and really hear it, then that person who has shared and has been heard can also be more available, more open to hearing a story that makes them uncomfortable, that challenges their worldview. And that it has to go both ways. And it doesn't work for, one people and whoever it is to say our story is the story that matters and matters more and is more true. When you have many people who feel differently. And so the story we have to tell, the new story has to include all of the pain, including the pain that might make us uncomfortable, if we're going to move forward. We're at about time. We had said this could go an hour and a half. I think we're going to be a little closer to the second, but Benji, I want you to say your question, and this will be kind of, I think, by way of a wrap up. Benji's question is about how the work you're doing at a grassroots level affects the people who are extremists, who are running things, who are the ones kind of in many ways choosing the direction that both Israel and Palestinians are going. So Benji, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah, thank you so much to Ophir and Layla, Rabbi Lizzi, Rabbi Stephen, and Mishkan for holding this. My question is, what do both of you, Ophir and Layla, see as bringing the extremists to become humanists that want peace for everyone? Some people will not move to see the humanism on both sides, and that their governments do not, and some say that their governments do not represent their individual thoughts or experiences. Do either of you see the extremists being brought to the humanist level, maybe not tomorrow, but in the next decade? And how do you see that happening? Doesn't have to be a hard timeline, but my hope would be in the next decade at the least.
I wish one day they will change their mind. Like when I look to myself before 16 years and how I become changed. So I believe one day maybe they will change if they will listen to us, if they listen to our story, if they listen how we lost our beloved ones, and we didn't choose to take revenge, because revenge is the easiest way to any person who's been hurted. The first thing that he think about is to take revenge. And I believe those people who are extremists, they are angry. So if we could sit with them and understand where this anger came from, and we spoke about that, not to fight with them, just spoke to them. I will tell you a short story about my father. My father, when he knows that I become part of this organization, he became angry and he asked me to quit from this organization. So one day when I traveled to Jordan, he said those things to me. We're still under occupation. They're still our enemies. You can't be with them. And, all these kind of things. And I said to him, I want to ask you a question. You know that my son died. Did you know his story? He said, no. I said to him, you know that I stayed in Bethlehem for 11 years, couldn't came back to visit you because I didn't have a Palestinian ID. Did you know what happened to my life during this 11 years? And he said, no. I said, how could you judge me? How could you ask me what to do or not to do? This is my choices, and this is my life, and this is what I want to my children. And whatever happened, I will never change my mind. And my father was shocked because for him to speak about the Israeli and about this kind of subject, it's the red line. And I didn't cross that line. I jumped from that line. And I was really shocked because I had that courage to argue with him and to talk to him. But that courage came from our pain. They said the thing that didn't break you down make you stronger. And this is what happened to us. Our pain is make us stronger. And because when you believe in something, you will fight for it. And you will fight peacefully about it. Thank you.
Yeah, there's not much to add to anything Laila put it in very clear way. I would just say at some point as I believe in me, that human beings, never really want to fight. They do it only because of distress, because something is, it's not any, if you look about very young babies, you won't see there's no racist, they're not sexist, they're no hate anybody, just want the connection. And so somehow we grow into it, and there's some very basic thing, fundamental thing we need to change. The thing is, because this situation now is so bad in many places in the world, but especially here in our part of the world, and because this extreme, very violent power takes so much violent parties and ideas take so much power right now in the regime. At least I would say for sure, also in the Palestinian side, I think, but especially in Israel. There's some work. I think this is what we are trying to do. I think this is maybe I don't know to say the tragedy, but the drama of the Israeli left. We don't know how to reach the Israeli people good enough. There's something we're missing them. It's not because Israelis are bad. I know, these are my people. I have people in my family that they're not completely like what I'm doing. They're not, nobody not speaking with me or something like this, but they don't believe in it and they say, I'm naive. And so there's something, I think neither of us in the Israeli side of it really know how to do it, because there's no really leadership right now that can stand against those extreme powers and offer some kind of another option. So I think this is exactly what we're trying to figure out. But I believe we will succeed. I don't think this situation will last forever. I mean, there are many other places in the world, and people were fighting against each other, and it seems like it's gonna, Europe was fighting, people were killing each other like, in the 50, 60, 70 years ago, and now it's a very peaceful place, and other places in the world. I think we can resolve this situation. It's not need some courage of some people, and especially from leadership. And we don't have it right now, not enough at least. Thank you. And I would just say I will need to quit in 2 or 3 minutes because it told me an
Yes.
hour from I have
Yes.
another Zoom at 6.
Yes, we are grateful for the two of you spending this time with us. And I think you've given us a lot to think about. I hope that people will listen to this. I know a few hundred people will listen to this in addition to the 35 or so people we've had here present in this moment. I just put a participant survey in the chat. So if you are here right now listening, please click on that so that you have it open on your screen once we close down the Zoom. But this helps the Parent Circle Families Forum know, how these opportunities are working. Mishkan made a donation to the Parent Circle Families Forum for Layla and Ophir's time and the emotional work of showing up and doing this, making, not just doing the work in Israel and Palestine, which is where the work is, but also sharing it with us so that we also will have a sense of who is trying, through painstaking and often undescribed, not publicly thanked by, not publicly thanked in the newspapers, but doing this work day in and day out, to change people's hearts and minds on the ground, to change the story on the ground, in your families, among your groups of friends, in schools, in universities. I want to pray and hope that more American audiences and audiences around the world hear the two of you speak, hear your colleagues and other people in the Parent Circle Families Forum speak. There's a 1-minute video on the website where members of the forum say in Hebrew and in Arabic, "We don't want you here." And what they mean by "we don't want you here" is we don't want any more members of this group. We don't want any more members of the Parent Circle Family Forum. We don't want any more people who suffer loss and sacrifice their children, or brothers or sisters, to this conflict. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may it be so. May it be so. And may all of their memories be blessings. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much. It was a
Thank
pleasure.
you so much.
And everyone who wants to come off mute as you say goodbye, feel free to come off mute to, say whatever you want to say.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Laila. Salam.
Thank you. Assalam.